This week, Microsoft boss Satya Nadella uncovering state-led internet manipulation and abominable animation.
Look at him, he's a Yeti!
Some call it fake news. Some call it disinformation, online manipulation, or even information warfare. The tech giants call it coordinated, inauthentic activity. False news articles on Facebook, bots amplifying questionable opinions on Twitter. What we now know is that nation-states have and are weaponizing these techniques to their own ends. Russia to interfere with elections, China to spread disinformation. But there is one place which hasn't been associated with deliberate disinformation recently, and that's Wikipedia. It's the largest collection of human knowledge ever created, arguably the first digital wonder of the world, the font of all internet knowledge. It has nearly 6 million pages with a staggering 18 billion page views every month. And it was created in the best spirit of the internet, transparent, non-profit making, and open for everyone to read and edit. We may have been naive to believe everything that we read on Facebook, but surely Wikipedia's army of volunteer editors and fact-checkers can keep disinformation under control? Well, now Click investigates evidence of a possible strategy by the Chinese state to manipulate Wikipedia for its own propaganda aims. Here's Carl Miller.
Edit wars stemming from genuine differences of opinion have been part and parcel of Wikipedia since the very beginning. So is vandalism, which is why Wikipedia has created ways to combat it, with a mixture of bots and editors with special powers patrolling the platform day and night.
But what's to stop people, or even worse, governments and regimes, from manipulating the site for their own ends? It's something that's bothered me instinctively for over a year now. What first got me on this track were these two documents, both initially written in Chinese, but we had them translated into English. One is written by a Chinese official, the other is written by a couple of academics.
They present a playbook for how Wikipedia operates, strategies to influence the platform, and argue there are strong reasons for doing so. Strategies such as creating teams to edit on the platform and cultivating opinion leaders, and using different rhetoric to change and rebalance China's image. Both papers stress what a vital source of information Wikipedia is for the people around the world who read it, but complain that it contains misleading and prejudiced content against China's national and governmental image. But this isn't just a problem to be confronted by volunteers. In the words of one of the papers, the Chinese state should act proactively too. One of the places mentioned is Taiwan. Situated to the southeast of mainland China, the island is regarded by China as a renegade province, but many in Taiwan dispute this understanding. So if a war on Wikipedia is going to be fought anywhere, it's going to be there. Armed with this information, I went to meet some Taiwanese Wikipedians at a hackathon in the capital city, Taipei.
This year is a very crazy year.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of Taiwanese Wikipedians be attacked and left.
Later on, they pointed me to some examples of the kind of manipulation they say is happening on Wikipedia on Chinese-related issues. One concerns the very nature of Taiwan itself. Is it an independent nation, or in fact a province of China?
They repeating editing Taiwan articles on the English and Chinese Wikipedia, and they wipe out the Taiwan opinion and just keep the China one.
Really?
They repeating and say, oh, Taiwan is part of China. Taiwan is a province of China.
It's not like outright vandalism, it's just like pruning the language, shifting the language to kind of go from one thing to another. How long would that been going on for?
It's going on years.
Years.
And examples kept flowing, such as the Senkaku Islands, a disputed territory actually, but which for a while was China's inherent territory, at least in Mandarin on the Wikidata pages. Although there are elected office holders with powers to take down or lock articles, some of Taiwan's Wikipedians fear that these elections for these positions have been targeted too, amidst a general rising atmosphere of intimidation.
So Taiwanese Wikipedians, or people that voice anti-Chinese opinions on Wikipedia, they get attacked and trolled and abused and doxxed on Wikipedia.
Verbally attacked.
What does Wikimedia Global think of all of this?
They don't care.
Is it because they're American then and they just don't know?
The hostile word was lost in translations.
Heather Ford has researched political edits on Wikipedia.
Whenever you have a group of motivated and well-resourced people who are taking a particular political line on Wikipedia articles, that they can very easily overwhelm the volunteer efforts of Wikipedia.
Our own investigation has managed to find nearly 1,600 times where, across 20 topics or so, Wikipedia was changed to broadly bring its content closer to the Chinese government's line. I tracked down an expert on Chinese social media and cybersecurity to give me a broader sense of how this all fitted in.
Telling the China story has become a really important concept and idea in the last couple of years in Chinese politics. They think that the rest of the world has wrong views of them, misunderstands them, and in order to do good politics for them, they need to project a good image.
Looking at the articles on the recent protests in Hong Kong, the English and Chinese versions are completely different from one another. This time the edit war between a couple of editors saw 52 changes in the space of a single day, arguing over the goals of the protesters and small language tweaks constantly, such as whether they were protesters or in fact rioters. Academic Shirley Yu thinks that trying to tell your story is really the natural behaviour for any up-and-coming superpower.
China feels like a Hong Kong issue is my issue. I own the issue, therefore I own the voices on the issue and I should own the verdicts on the issue. So everything that China is primarily interested in and concerned about is to defend its political positions. It's all about China. The Anglo-Saxon world, primarily over the past 4 decades, has really framed the China story and interpretation of China based on a Western philosophical and political economic framework. And I think today China does owe the world a China story told by itself and from a China's perspective. I think it's not only a Chinese privilege, it's really a responsibility.
We really don't know how widespread all this is across the vast expanse of Wikipedia's multilingual entries, and it is impossible for us to verify whether the Chinese government really is ultimately responsible for any of it.
Absolutely conceivable that, like people from the diaspora, patriotic Chinese are editing these Wikipedia entries. But to say that is also to ignore that larger, structural coordinated strategy that the government has to manipulate these platforms.
Heather Ford isn't surprised at all to see that states might be getting involved.
I'm surprised it's taken this long, actually. I mean, when you consider the fact that Wikipedia is not only the 5th most popular website in the world, when you ask Siri or you ask Google questions, now using the knowledge engine is from Wikipedia. So it is a prioritized source of knowledge and facts about the world. And if you can influence that, then you are influencing how people are understanding and perceiving what the truth is.
That is fascinating stuff. And Carl's with me now in our underground bunker somewhere. Carl, how sure can we be that these manipulations are being done under instruction from the Chinese state? And also, how sure can we be that it is really widespread?
We know there were 1,500 tendentious edits in our own investigation across roughly 20 different Wikipedia entries. And we know that all of them pointed in certain ways towards Chinese geopolitical interests as far as we can tell. What we do not know is who was behind these edits. We don't know why, in fact, they were done. And probably most importantly, we cannot make a direct link between any of those edits and the Chinese government themselves.
Okay, so you've put this to the Wikimedia Foundation, which is the kind of overarching body that oversees Wikipedia. What's their reaction?
Broadly, they're saying that whatever you're actually doing on the site, if you're systematically doing it for political gain, that really is against the very reason why Wikipedia was really created. But
the problem is that we've heard the same from Facebook and other Web 2.0 companies, where they're basically saying, well, it violates our terms and conditions, but people still do it.
The ace in the hole for Wikipedia would be that they're now passing these links that we've sent them and all the evidence that we have to their tens of thousands of community editors and volunteers. Wikimedia, the foundation, is not actually responsible for the content. That would be the volunteers themselves, which of course is a huge benefit for them. They can mobilise all these people around the world who will constantly patrol and protect the site, and in fact do return many of the edits that we saw, at least, back to their original state actually quite quickly.
Doesn't this come down to different definitions of the truth?
Of course, it's worth remembering that, at least in the eyes of the authors of the papers we covered, they were simply being motivated by a desire to correct Western misconceptions and biases regarding China. You know, you've got with Wikipedia this kind of vision of an open internet, open knowledge, open source. But then in stark contrast, you have this another kind of newer, perhaps, but rising idea. And that is the kind of increasing power of states online. You know, the idea that geopolitical battles will now be fought online too, and that places like Wikipedia may be becoming too important or too powerful for states to really ignore in their struggles over the truth and in defining what people believe.
Carl, how absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for all the research.
Hello and welcome to the Week in Tech. It was the week that Facebook felt the power of the European Court of Justice. It ruled that courts in the EU can order the social network to remove users' comments that have been deemed illegal. The EU also brought in new right to repair laws, and from 2021, washing machines, dishwashers and fridges will have to be built to be longer lasting. Makers will also have to supply replacement parts for up to 10 years. Elon Musk unveiled Starship, a shuttle intended to carry crew and cargo to the Moon, Mars and beyond. The SpaceX shuttle is expected to take its first test flight later this year. And GoPro unveiled a new device that allows vloggers to bolt on a separate mic, light and flip-up screen. The company hoped the Hero 8 Black will prove a success after mixed reviews for the Hero 7. Osteoarthritis patients are testing the world's first smart glove for at-home treatment, thanks to a pilot run by hospitals in Madrid. The device can be programmed by doctors to heat up, vibrate and perform physical therapy while patients rest at home. The firm behind the glove says this makes it easier and cheaper for health services to treat patients. And finally, a bright-eyed robot assistant is helping out nurses at a hospital in Texas. Made by Diligent Robotics, Moxie uses AI to recognise its surroundings and features a camera, LiDAR sensors and a gripper to pick up objects. Don't worry, the humanoid bot is only running errands at present, so there's no chance of a robot bed bath just yet.
We're here at Microsoft's Future Decoded event, which is looking at AI and how it may change workplaces across the world. Back in the day, Microsoft changed everything with Windows, making itself the most valuable company in the world and Bill Gates the richest person in the world. But then things went a little wrong, mostly because Microsoft missed the mobile revolution and fell well behind Apple and Google. But then, as we told you earlier this year, along came new boss Satya Nadella with a master plan to return Microsoft to its former glory. Well, now Dave Lee has caught up with the man himself to find out how that reinvention is going.
This week, Microsoft Chief Executive Satya Nadella was in New York to show off a range of new devices the firm has been working on. But before showing them to the world, Microsoft invited me to Seattle and into their lab, a place where the firm's devices are conceived and perfected in a number of curious and, as you'll see, painful ways. Engineers here are able to prototype and make design modifications on the fly, going through many different iterations before settling on the final design that will get mass-produced in China. But that doesn't happen until it's gone through a series of extensive and unusual tests.
This is Microsoft's Human Factors Lab. It's here where they test their new devices for how they're going to look, how they're going to feel, including under different lighting conditions, like when you're at home or if you're in bright sunlight. The work that takes place in the Human Factors Lab is a closely guarded secret. In fact, it's a closely guarded secret even once the products they've made are released to the public. As far as these people are concerned, if they've done their job properly, you won't notice their efforts. This machine is monitoring my brainwaves to see how much concentration it takes to perform certain tasks, such as typing. And this test is looking at how much muscle strain I endure when I open a laptop. Something that didn't seem too strenuous to me, but is apparently very important. To find out what I'm going through, a wire the width of a human hair is implanted into my hand and then monitored for activity. And then we have our ears to think about. Microsoft is following Apple and Amazon and Samsung in coming out with its own so-called smart earbuds. These are devices that you stick in your ear to hear things, obviously, but also you can use touch gestures to interact with your computer.
What we have is a small amount of prototypes that it took to design Surface earbuds. And it was a long journey. It was roughly 3 years. We scanned thousands of ears and we take data from that. We also took the approach of just trying it on, right? I mean, like, we can take a ton of data from the ear scans and inform us of general shape, but it really comes down to making the prototype and putting it in people's ears. So hundreds and hundreds of people would come through this lab, try it on, give us feedback, and then we go through another iteration.
Microsoft's big secret at the New York event were these two folding devices, the Surface Neo and the Surface Duo. The Neo is essentially two tablets hinged together, running a modified version of Windows designed to work either across two screens or on two screens independently. And the Duo is essentially two smartphones together running Google Android instead of Windows.
The overload is much less. I'm staying in context on a web browser on one side, I'm using Edge on one side, and I'm looking at my mail on the other. I have a calendar on one side, I have my mail on the other. But it's structured in a way that you're actually optimizing and feeling good about being productive.
The devices have been a long-term passion project of Panos Panay, Microsoft's Chief Product Officer. He's very attached to this idea. The devices won't come out until late next year. Before then, a few glitches need to be ironed out.
I'm going to open mail here. I'll use a pen because touch is a little bit better with a pen. I think I overheated my device.
Curse of the demo.
Microsoft has taken a different approach to their rivals. Samsung's Galaxy Fold, for example, is already on the market, and that has a screen that goes all the way across the hinge, although some users have complained that that screen isn't particularly reliable. This is the biggest range of hardware Microsoft has ever launched in a single year, adding new lines to a side of its business that in less than a decade has become worth more than $5 billion a year to Microsoft.
We were the first to create the two-in-one category when no one thought that that could be done. We then created even the desktop that could become a canvas for creativity with Studio. We created HoloLens that brought what was digital and physical together, and we've continued to innovate. And so therefore this two-screen innovation is what we think is fantastic for the kinds of things that we care a lot about, which is productivity, creativity, pen input, to me able to have Teams on one side and then to be able to take notes. Like, that's an everyday scenario.
But Samsung, bendy screen, they've pulled it off with a few reliability issues. Huawei, they seem to have done the same thing. So was Microsoft trying to do that, or did it just take a different direction?
Which is a different direction. In fact, I've been using even the Samsung Fold. It's a beautiful device. We have worked very closely with them on getting our software on Samsung, and so we think that that's great innovation too. So I celebrate whenever new computers and new computing is created, because I think that's what the world needs. If anything, one of the other things we want to sort of do is, like, consumption is great, right? I mean, more browsing, more shopping, more binge watching, that all has, you and I do that. But also more creativity and more productivity is also great. We want that balance. To some degree, the last 10 years has been more about consumption, less about creation, and we want to swing that balance to the right place.
That was Dave Lee. Now, here on Click, you know we love keeping tabs on the latest movie-making techniques, especially CGI and animation. So, Kate Russell has gained extremely rare access to Dreamworks studios in Los Angeles to look at the secrets of animated filmmaking with a look at their latest release, Abominable.
Of course!
Really?
No.
Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, How to Train Your Dragon. Just a few of the film series created by Dreamworks Animation Studios.
Hey, what are you doing out here? Someone's gonna see you.
And their newest film, Abominable, has released in the States and topped the weekend box office.
As animation techniques improve, the amount of time it takes to make these movies increases exponentially. Take this guy, for example. The original Shrek in 2001 took 6 terabytes of data and around 5 million hours of render time.
For Abominable, we had 150 terabytes of used space that'll be archived, and then we had another 150 terabytes of temp space just for effect simulations and all that data. And we used about 181 million render hours.
Make it go bigger! Work on Abominable began 7 years ago. So why does it take so long to get the original idea from paper to screen?
Make an animated movie almost like you're making a live-action movie. And all the technicalities of a camera in live action are now incorporated into animation. Before, we used to do all in 2D. We used to film with a camera locked up and on top of a table, so everything had to be moving down on the paper. But with this kind of technology, the camera is inside the drawing, and we move the camera around the drawing, and we find the character, and we have to build the whole world that way.
Back in the Shrek days, you would basically try and light and render a scene, and you would wait and wait and wait to see an image, and then you could make your changes, and you'd wait and wait again. And so the feedback loop, which is critical for the artists, has really improved. So this is a Moonray interactive render, and as you can see, I can interactively move the character around in space, change the camera, but I can also go through and actually start making lighting changes, and as I do that, the feedback is almost instantaneous, but the overall time has increased. So that's why the overall render hours has increased, because we're just doing much more complex lighting calculations.
So, how animated films are made here has changed massively over the last couple of decades, with more data meaning more detail.
The shot is around 120 frames, or no, 220 frames, and that's about 14 feet of animation. So that means this shot should take an animator 2 weeks to do.
Technology might be at the heart of realizing an artist's vision, but very often the soul of an idea comes directly from the natural world. Take these koi carp in the lagoon here at the Dreamworks campus. They were an inspiration for the amazing cloud koi flight scene in the movie.
Here's our final image, which Ariel Chisholm, our lighting lead for the sequence, really did an amazing job.
And the results? Well, they're far from abominable.
Guys, what are you doing up here?
Hey, get away from her! Wait. Okay, I'm calling the police.
He's not dangerous. Look at him, he's a Yeti!
Brilliant. That was Kate in LA. And that's it for this week. But don't forget, as always, you can find us throughout the week on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube and Twitter at BBC Click. You'll also find us on Wikipedia. Look us up. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.